The sun was just beginning to set behind the dusty ridgeline. As my truck crunched its way up the gravel drive, I cut the engine, stepped out, and inhaled the scent of juniper and scorched earth. After 12 days off-grid in the Colorado backcountry, home felt like another planet. Quiet, dry, and predictably mine. At least it was supposed to be. The ranch had been in my family for generations, long before the Cedar Ridge HOA crept in like a weed, wrapping its fingers around our town's independence. They brought their rules, their architectural guidelines, and worst of all, Karen Mulrooney. I hadn't planned to come back early. Wildfires 2 counties over cut my trip short, but standing there beside my truck, boots dusted and fishing rod still in the back seat, I knew something was off. The front gate was open. I never left it open. My stomach clenched. I walked faster than I should have toward the house, instincts twitching. As I rounded the bend near the old sycamore, I froze. There they were, sprawled across my backyard like it was a damn resort. Karen's husband, Jim, was shirtless in my hammock, sipping what appeared to be my sweet tea. Their 2 kids splashed around in my pool, shrieking like it was summer break in suburbia. And Karen herself, reclined in a patio chair, wide-brimmed hat pulled low, sunglasses perched on her nose, scrolling through her phone with the self-assurance of a queen surveying her kingdom. My kingdom. I marched forward, heart pounding. What the hell is going on? Karen didn't flinch. She slid her sunglasses down with a look of vague annoyance, as though I was the one intruding. "Oh, Rick," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're early. Early. That's what you're going with." My voice shook with disbelief. "Why are you on my property? And how did you get in?" She stood up with the grace of someone used to getting her way. "Your guest house was unlocked. It's not technically breaking and entering. Besides, the HOA allows temporary emergency occupancy if a property is left unmonitored. Section 4C of the Community Code." My jaw clenched. "What emergency?" She gestured toward the Psalm. "Kids. Heat advisory. Our air conditioning gave out. I couldn't risk heat stroke." I took a step closer. "So you broke into my home?" Karen arched a brow. "It's hardly breaking in. More like borrowing." I noticed a stack of half-eaten food on the patio table. My food. My grill still smoking. My generator running in. The background. "You're squatting," I said coldly. "Pack your things and get off my property. Now." That's when she did the unthinkable. Without breaking eye contact, Karen reached into her oversized tote and pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen and lifted it to her ear. "Yes, 911. I'm at 303 West Canyon Trail. There's a man here, acting aggressively. He's shouting and making threats. I have children here. Please hurry." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "You called the cops." On me. She turned her back and kept speaking, fake tremor in her voice. "Yes, he just showed up. We thought the house was unoccupied. He's yelling. My kids are scared." I didn't say another word. I stood there, hands at my sides, heart racing, as the wail of sirens echoed faintly in the distance. By the time the deputies arrived, Jim had thrown a shirt on and was pacing near the fence, pretending to look concerned. The kids had been herded. Inside, Karen greeted the officers with tears and drama, spinning a story about a violent ranch owner who had returned early and was unstable and potentially armed. I kept my cool. I showed them the deed, the security footage, the documents proving Karen had zero legal access. After 20 minutes of sorting facts from fiction, the deputies gave her a choice: leave voluntarily or face trespassing charges. She left, but not before flashing me a triumphant smile, as though the whole ordeal had been some clever chess move. I stood there, fists clenched, watching her pack up her pool bag like it was just another Sunday. No apology, no remorse, just that smug, infuriating look. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just a violation of property. It was a declaration of war. Karen's little stunt didn't sit quietly in the back of my mind. It burned. Not just because she trespassed or called the cops on me, but because she walked away feeling untouchable. The next morning, I sat on my porch with a cup of black coffee, watching the sun rise over the hills. My phone buzzed with a notification from the HOA portal. I opened it and nearly spit out my drink. Violation notice, HOA 247. Excessive dust accumulation on perimeter fence. I scoffed. Dust? Out here in ranch country. That's like citing a beach for having too much sand. Karen was behind it. I knew her signature tactic. Weaponizing the HOA rules like they were sacred scripture. It was her favorite game. 2 more popped up before noon. Violation 248. Unauthorized structure. Hayshed roof too wide. Violation 249. Unapproved decorative element. American flag windsock. 3 violations in a day, each one carrying potential fines and the threat of escalation. That's when I realized Karen wasn't retreating, she was retaliating. The ranch sat on the edge of HOA jurisdiction, grandfathered in long before the modern developments sprang up like weeds. But the board, especially Karen, had been trying to rope my land under full compliance for years. She'd finally found her leverage. False emergencies, nuisance reports, and a slow bleed of HOA harassment. I decided then, if she wanted a war, she'd get one. The first step, information. I went to the county assessor's office that afternoon. A few favors, and a lot of squinting through old public records. Unearthed something delicious. Karen's home sat on land zoned for residential use only, and yet she'd been running a wellness side business from her backyard, private yoga sessions, essential oil sales, even weekend retreats. Technically, that was a zoning violation, and I wasn't above using her own tactics. Back at the ranch, I got to work, set up trail cameras to monitor my property lines, mounted a new security system. I wasn't just protecting my land. I was documenting everything. A few days later, I filed an official complaint with the zoning board. Then I sent an anonymous tip to the county tax auditor. Karen had been using her home business income while writing off improvements as homeowner upgrades. Classic paper trail blunder. It was only a matter of time before that house of cards shook. But what surprised me wasn't how fast the response came. It was how petty Karen got once she felt the walls close in. First, my mailbox disappeared. Not knocked over. Gone. Vanished. Then, the power line to my barn mysteriously disconnected during a stormless night, and finally, I found tire marks near my horse stables. Deep ones. As if someone had driven off-road to intimidate my livestock. Each time I reported the incident, deputies came and went, shaking their heads, muttering about neighbor disputes, and telling me to install motion sensor lights. What they didn't see, what Karen didn't know, is that I already had. 3 nights after the tire incident, I caught a black SUV on camera, driving slowly past my front gate, then idling. It was Karen's husband, Jim. I recognized the dented bumper and faded flag sticker. That was the final straw. The next morning, I walked straight into the HOA monthly board meeting. Every seat was filled with board retirees and smug committee chairs. Karen sat at the head of the table, like a self-appointed queen, perfectly poised, pencil skirt crisp, smile weaponized. The moment she saw me, her eyes narrowed. "Rick," she said flatly, "this is a closed meeting." "Not anymore," I replied, tossing a folder on the table. Inside were high-res photos, time-stamped logs, and a neatly organized timeline. Squatting on private property, misuse of HOA codes, and a running list of her business activities that violated multiple county ordinances. She didn't touch it, but her hands tensed. "I've already sent copies to the zoning board, the county assessor, and my attorney," I said, loud enough for the room to fall into a hush. "But I figured the board should know what kind of leader it has." Silence, then murmurs. Karen forced a brittle smile. "Rick, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding." I leaned in just enough. "So was you breaking into my ranch?" Her smile cracked. For the first time, Karen looked unsure. She wasn't used to pushback, certainly not public exposure. The board chair cleared his throat and asked to review the materials privately. I left the room without looking back. As I stepped into the parking lot, a weight lifted off my chest. The war wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time, I wasn't playing defense anymore. Karen didn't take humiliation lightly. By the end of the week, whispers of her backyard yoga business and misuse of HOA funds had spread through Cedar Ridge like wildfire. Her once loyal circle started to shrink. The smug smile she wore like armor, gone. She kept her head down during HOA patrols, avoided eye contact during dog walks, and cancelled her Saturday wine and cheese socials. But like any predator backed into a corner, she didn't retreat, she lashed out. Late Thursday evening, I returned from hauling feed to find a bright orange notice stapled to my fence post. HOA special hearing, mandatory attendance. Subject probationary review of member conduct. Rick Dalton. I laughed. The audacity. She was trying to paint me as the problem now, probably calling in every favor she had left. A probation hearing was rare, drastic, usually reserved for repeat violators or serious disputes that jeopardized neighborhood harmony. But I knew her playbook. She was trying to flip the script, to frame me as the hostile neighbor. And I had aggressor. What she didn't count on was how prepared I'd become. The night of the hearing, the HOA's meeting hall buzzed with tension. Folding chairs were filled with curious residents. Most had heard bits and pieces of the drama, and many showed up just to see sparks fly. Karen, always theatrically composed, took center stage like a seasoned actress. She laid out a case built entirely on fiction, accusations of threatening behavior, property intimidation, and community destabilization. "I'm only doing what's best for Cedar Ridge," she said sweetly, clasping her hands. "I don't want to see a neighbor ostracized, but we must hold ourselves to a higher standard." I waited for the silence, then stood. My voice was steady, calm. "I've lived on that ranch since my grandfather put his hands in this dirt. I've never raised my voice at a neighbor. I've never been violent. What I have done is protect what's mine from someone who thinks she's above the rules." I handed a thick manila envelope to the board chair. Inside, you'll find audio recordings of Karen admitting to squatting on my land, multiple 911 calls she made without cause, and a statement from a county inspector confirming her home business is unregistered, untaxed, and operating without permits. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable," under their breath. Karen paled. I wasn't done. Also included are photos of tire damage on my property that match Jim Mulrooney's vehicle. Funny thing about gravel, it remembers everything. The board. Flip through the contents. Brows furrowing. A murmur of disapproval swept the room. Karen shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting for support that wasn't there. "I'm not here to attack the HOA," I finished, But if you're going to call a meeting about conduct, then it needs to be about hers. The silence that followed was loud. Finally, the chair cleared his throat. Given the severity of the materials submitted, we're tabling the motion against Mr. Dalton until further review. However, we will be investigating the allegations against Ms. Mulrooney. Karen didn't speak. She just sat there, jaw tight, hands clasped too tightly. A portrait of someone who'd lost control. That night, as I walked out of the hall, neighbors nodded at me. Some patted my shoulder. Even those who once treated me like a fringe dweller now offered quiet respect. But the real confirmation came 3 days later. A county code enforcement vehicle pulled into Karen's driveway. 2 inspectors walked straight into her backyard and began taking photos. That night, her yoga deck came down in pieces. Her wellness banners disappeared from the fences. The Friday night sessions, cancelled indefinitely. The HOA board sent out a community-wide notice that week. A full audit was being launched on past violation reports. Any false or retaliatory claims would be permanently struck, and the submitting party placed under probation. Karen didn't show up to the next board meeting. Her name disappeared from the HOA officer list the following month. Still, I didn't celebrate. Not yet, because while the storm had passed, I could feel the aftershocks rumbling beneath the surface. People like Karen didn't just fade into the background. They plotted in the shadows. And something told me she had one more card to play. It was a Tuesday when Karen made her final move. The sky was overcast, the kind of grey that presses on your chest, heavy with something unspoken. I'd just finished fixing the irrigation valve near the horse corral when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to answer. Mr. Dalton. Yes, this is Deputy Green. We received a 911 call from a woman claiming you were holding a family hostage on your property. I blinked. What? There's a report of squatting and an unlawful detainment situation. We're en route. Please remain calm and stay where you are. My pulse kicked up. Hostage. Was she serious? 15 minutes later, 3 sheriffs. Cruisers rolled onto my land, lights flashing. Deputies exited, hands resting cautiously on their hips. And right behind them came Karen. She stood by her SUV, arms crossed, crocodile tears welling up in her eyes. Behind her were 2 teenagers, her niece and nephew, from out of town, I later learned, playing up the scene with wide eyes and scared expressions. She locked them out, Karen shouted. They were staying here with permission, while the owners were out of town. Rick just came back early and forced them out. Deputy Green approached me calmly. Sir, we need to hear both sides. I took a breath and nodded. No problem, but you'll want to see this. I unlocked my phone and pulled up the trail cam footage from 3 days prior. There, crystal clear, was Karen's SUV pulling up to my private gate. The teens hopped out, carrying duffels, and followed Karen as she used a bolt cutter to snap the padlock. Next clip, them lounging in lawn chairs by my fire pit. Next, Karen returning with groceries. I handed over the footage without another word. The deputy walked back to Karen, and suddenly the air shifted. Her performance faltered. What is this? Deputy Green asked sharply. Were you aware this property is owned and occupied? Karen stammered. Well, I thought it was still vacant. My friend used to rent it. No, I interrupted, walking up beside them. No one's rented this ranch in 3 years. I've been here full-time since I left the army. She broke in and played real estate agent to her own family. Karen's face turned to stone. The deputies talked quietly among themselves. After a tense minute, they approached her. Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us for questioning. The property owner has security footage, and the 911 call appears to be knowingly false. Karen gasped like she'd been slapped. "This is harassment. This is personal revenge." Deputy Green shook his head. "No, ma'am. This is criminal trespass and a false police report. They didn't cuff her, but they didn't need to." Seeing her slide into the back of that cruiser, all her smug confidence evaporated, was its own kind of justice. The kids were released to their parents, who showed up embarrassed and apologetic, swearing they'd been misled by Aunt Karen's Airbnb story. I let it go. They were kids, duped and dropped into a feud they didn't understand. By sunset, my ranch was mine again. That night, sitting on the porch under a blanket of stars, I let myself exhale. The last few months had been a battleground of passive-aggressive warfare and full-on sabotage, but it was over. Karen resigned officially from the HOA board the next week. Her house went up for sale within the month. Rumor had it she was relocating to a different suburb with a less invasive community culture. I didn't attend the going-away party, but I did notice her yoga signs popped up on a local Facebook group about 40 miles away. Old habits. The HOA, for its part, learned a valuable lesson. The new board leadership implemented transparency reforms. Violation reports required evidence. False claims earned penalties. And for the first time in a long time, Cedar Ridge began to feel less like a regime and more like a neighborhood. As for me, I got back to the rhythm of ranch life, feeding the horses, fixing fences, brewing my coffee in peace. But I left the cameras up and the new lock on the gate, reinforced steel, triple secured, because I've learned that while most storms pass, some come back around, disguised in sunshine, waiting for another crack to slip through. And next time, I won't just be ready, I'll be waiting.